The WNBA has never seen chaos like this. What began as competition has exploded into obsession. And at the center of it all stands one woman, Caitlin Clark. Her name alone can shift headlines, spark wars on social media, and divide locker rooms from coast to coast. Every tweet, every look, every silence has become ammunition in a league that's eating itself alive over her meteoric rise. The chaos surrounding Caitlin Clark has reached a fever pitch. A storm that's no longer confined to the hardwood, but has spilled into every corner of the WNBA's ecosystem. It's no exaggeration to say the league has become obsessed, whether it's players quietly comparing themselves to her, media accounts rage-baiting the fan base, or fans dissecting every facial expression from the Indiana Fever bench. The tension is palpable. The narrator captures it perfectly when he points out that only two players, Angel Reese and Ryan Howard, we seem to believe they're better than Clark. Everyone else, even Paige Bueckers, who's constantly pitted against her, seems to have an unspoken acknowledgement of Clark's dominance. The narrator even jokes that Bueckers sometimes forgets she's Paige Bueckers, a comment that perfectly sums up how Clark's presence has altered the mental landscape of women's basketball. Beneath the competition, there's a deep undercurrent of respect, even fear. It's a dynamic that's been weaponized online, twisted by rage merchants who thrive on division. The reality is far more nuanced. Clark's peers might envy her attention, but most of them know exactly how good she is. They just won't say it publicly. And that's where the real tension begins. Online discourse around Caitlin Clark has devolved into pure chaos, factless, venomous, and deliberately provocative. The narrator points out that what began as sports debates has turned into hate campaigns. Entire accounts now exist just to bait fans into outrage, twisting data, cherry-picking stats, and manufacturing false narratives that downplay Clark's historic rookie season. Even discussions about her injuries are used as weapons, as if missing games somehow invalidates the dominance she displayed when she was on the court. The distortion is relentless, and the result is an environment so toxic that it bleeds into the locker room. This isn't just fan chatter, it's shaping the perception of players and teams. The narrator's frustration is clear. He's tired of defending facts against people who are arguing in bad faith. Clark's numbers speak for themselves. She was one of the best guards in the league from day one. But the anti-Clark crowd refuses to admit it because acknowledging her greatness would ruin their entire narrative. That kind of collective denial is dangerous. It feeds an online mob mentality where hate becomes engagement. And engagement becomes currency. Every click, every quote tweet, every "she's overrated" post fuels an ecosystem of misinformation that's tearing at the credibility of women's basketball itself. This madness doesn't exist in a vacuum. The Indiana Fever's locker room has become the epicenter of this swirling chaos. While fans online argue about stats and favoritism, real players are dealing with real fallout. Lexie Hull, a restricted free agent this offseason, broke her silence. But what she didn't say spoke louder than anything she did. When asked about her future, she was warm, heartfelt, loyal. "I've loved my years here," she said. "I love this franchise, the fans, the people." But when the subject shifted toward the supposed locker room drama involving Caitlin Clark, silence, calculated, deliberate silence. It wasn't denial, and it wasn't confirmation. It was strategy. Because sometimes in a volatile environment, the safest play is to say nothing at all. That silence sent shockwaves through fans and commentators alike. Was she protecting the team, avoiding conflict, or simply trying not to add fuel to the fire? Whatever the reason, her decision not to address the swirling rumors only made them louder. Suddenly, her free agency became more than a career. Milestone Night became a mirror reflecting the Fever's internal instability and the suffocating pressure that comes from being at the center of basketball's most polarizing storm. Behind closed doors, it's not hard to imagine the tension. A locker room full of personalities, egos, and media noise, all orbiting around a 23-year-old phenom, who's simultaneously the league's biggest draw and its biggest lightning rod. Clark didn't ask for this level of hysteria, but she can't escape it either. Her every move is dissected in slow motion, her every mistake magnified, her every success weaponized. For veterans like Hull, this can't be easy. They're trying to balance loyalty, friendship, and professionalism in a climate where every word can become tomorrow's headline. The narrator emphasizes that these online narratives have real consequences. Players are now hyper-aware of what's being said about them. It changes how they speak, how they interact, even how they play. The WNBA has become a minefield of perception management, where silence is seen as complicity and honesty can be career suicide. And through it all, Clark remains the unwilling focal point. A player whose presence is both a gift and a burden for everyone around her. Adding to the chaos are whispers of deeper instability, contract negotiations, coaching issues, and even league-wide anxiety over the looming CBA talks. The narrator mentions how the WNBA's upcoming collective bargaining discussions have everyone on edge. From front offices to players like Hull who don't yet know what their future holds. There's a growing fear that financial uncertainty could disrupt everything. The possibility of a lockout, while still unlikely, hangs over the league like a dark cloud. Every decision from trades to free agent signings feels heavier, riskier. It's not just about basketball anymore. It's about job security, image, and survival. The Fever, already under the microscope, are especially vulnerable. They're a team built around youth and hype, but hype doesn't pay the bills. When the stakes are this high, even the smallest internal tension can feel catastrophic. That's why Hull's words and her omissions carry so much weight. Her calm, loyal demeanor contrasts sharply with the turbulence swirling around her. But it also hints at just how much everyone inside that locker room is trying to hold together. Then there's the external storm that refuses to calm down. The manufactured outrage online. The narrator admits he's even been rage-baited himself. Tricked by AI-generated posts and fake credible WNBA sources claiming absurd things like, "Clark isn't a top 5 player under 25. These posts aren't debates, they're digital traps. Their goal isn't discussion, it's division. And the worst part? They work. They rack up thousands of likes, retweets, and replies, sucking people into the outrage economy." The narrator breaks it down plainly. These posts exist because negativity sells. If you post something anti-Caitlin Clark, it's guaranteed engagement. The same players and influencers who claim to support women's sports end up amplifying hate just to farm attention. It's a vicious cycle where integrity is sacrificed for clicks. And every time it happens, the narrative around Clark gets more distorted, making it even harder for casual fans to separate fact from fiction. It's a feedback loop of misinformation, where perception becomes reality and truth gets buried beneath a mountain of performative outrage. What makes this situation even messier is how the league itself seems caught in the crossfire. The narrator draws attention to how structural instability in certain coaching staff, contract drama, and league politics feeds into the narrative of dysfunction. It's not just about who likes or dislikes Clark. It's about a franchise and a league struggling to manage its own success. The Fever have the league's biggest star, but they're also under more scrutiny than any other team. Every small issue gets blown out of proportion. Coaching disagreements become locker room implosions. Routine player negotiations turn into betrayal sagas. It's exhausting and it's unsustainable. But that's the environment Clark has walked into, one where her stardom has amplified everything to a deafening volume. Even her teammates can't escape it. Hull's restricted free agent status, which should have been a simple career checkpoint, now feels like a referendum on the team's unity and direction. Her future isn't just about her, it's about what her decision will say about the state of the Fever. Underneath all of this noise lies a simple truth. Caitlin Clark has changed the WNBA forever, for better and for worse. Her skill, charisma, and star power have brought unprecedented attention to the league. But they've also triggered insecurities, rivalries, and cultural clashes that the league wasn't prepared to handle. The narrator captures this contradiction beautifully. How admiration for Clark's talent coexists with resentment toward her fame. Some see her as the future of women's basketball. Others see her as a threat to the status quo. But one thing is undeniable. She's the center of every conversation. Even when people try to ignore her, they can't. Even when players avoid mentioning her by name, they're still reacting to her presence. That's the mark of true influence. It's not just about what she does on the court. It's about how she forces everyone around her to reveal who they really are. This evolving saga isn't just a sports story anymore, it's a social experiment unfolding in real time. It's about how fandom, media, and ego collide in the age of digital rage. It's about how silence can be louder than words, and how perception can destroy or define careers. As the offseason stretches on and the CBA clock keeps ticking, every player, coach, and commentator in the WNBA is being It started with a single post, one anonymous account, one bold headline, and within hours, the entire internet was on fire. Caitlin Clark exposed. The tweet read, "A lie dressed up as truth, engineered to trigger chaos." The narrator says it best: it wasn't journalism. It was gasoline. And the WNBA fanbase, they didn't just take the bait, they devoured it. Within a day, thousands of quote tweets, angry threads, and YouTube breakdowns flooded timelines, each one twisting the narrative just a little further from reality. What had begun as debate had become destruction. Every stat, every play, every sideline expression was ripped apart and reassembled to fit whichever agenda burned hottest that day. It's no longer about basketball, it's about control. About who gets to define Caitlin Clark's story, and by extension, the story of the modern WNBA itself. The narrator's tone turns sharp, dissecting how misinformation has evolved into an industry. Rage farming isn't an accident, it's a business model. He explains how anti-Clark posts don't just appear out of nowhere. They're strategically timed, perfectly worded to ignite maximum outrage. Some even use AI-generated data, fake quotes, doctored screenshots to prove whatever point fuels the most engagement. It's weaponized deception. The irony: the very people claiming to protect women's basketball are the ones tearing it apart for clout. The narrator calls it the economy of outrage. And Clark sits unwillingly at its center, lightning rod for every insecurity, every bias, every grievance the sport has buried for decades. What's happening to her isn't new, but it's never been this amplified. The narrator compares it to the early days of LeBron James, when every move was dissected, every decision ridiculed. But the difference here is the ecosystem. Back then, the conversation lived on ESPN. Now it lives everywhere on X, Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube, where algorithms reward hate faster than highlights. The moment Clark's name is typed, the system spins into motion. Comments flood in, creators scramble to upload, and the machine keeps feeding itself. The narrator pauses and says, Caitlin doesn't even need to play a game anymore to trend. All she has to do is exist. That's the danger of fame in 2025. It's not measured by applause, but by how much chaos follows your name. And the chaos has real victims. Inside the Indiana Fever's facility, players scroll through their phones and see the storm in real time. Even those who support Clark privately can't always defend her publicly. It's too risky. One wrong tweet, one misunderstood like, and they're the next target. The narrator describes the mood in the Fever locker room as tense silence. People smile, they talk, they practice, but the weight of the outside noise hangs over everything. It's changed how players interact, how coaches speak to the media, how rookies carry themselves. What used to be a team has slowly become a survival zone. The Fever aren't just playing opponents, they're playing narratives. Lexie Hull's silence, in particular, becomes symbolic. That pause during her interview wasn't just hesitation, it was a message. It said, "I know it's happening, and I'm not touching it." The narrator breaks it down like a chess move, calculated, defensive, and necessary. Because in the WNBA's current climate, honesty is dangerous. If you support Clark too openly, you're accused of pandering. If you criticize her, you're labeled jealous. If you stay neutral, you're branded complicit. There's no winning, only surviving. And that's the tragedy of it all. The league that's supposed to be celebrating growth and unity has instead turned its brightest star into a fault line. Meanwhile, the algorithms keep spinning. Every fabricated controversy feeds another. A clip of Clark sighing on the bench becomes proof of a rift. A teammate's neutral expression becomes shade. Even moments of joy are twisted, smiles are interpreted as arrogance, celebrations as disrespect. The narrator shows screenshots of these posts, pausing to highlight how carefully edited they are. Context is stripped away, captions are rewritten, and the result is a digital illusion that millions mistake for reality. We're living in an era, he says, where lies spread faster than highlight sand. That's terrifying. As the camera pans to footage of Clark practicing alone in an empty gym, the narrator's voice softens. All she ever wanted was to hoop, he says. But somewhere along the way, the game stopped being enough. The sound of dribbling echoes through the silence. You can feel the exhaustion, not just physical, but emotional. Clark's work ethic hasn't changed. Her focus hasn't wavered. Yet somehow she's become a symbol of everything people love and hate about women's basketball. She's not just playing for points anymore. She's playing for validation against critics who've decided her success is too much, too soon, too loud, and that's where the system wins. The chaos isn't random, it's engineered to drain her, to make her question herself, to make fans pick sides, to keep everyone arguing instead of appreciating the game. The narrator calls it sports cannibalism when a league starts consuming its own stars. The Fever, caught in the crossfire, are trying to keep composure, but how long can a young team endure that kind of pressure? Every story about Clark becomes a story about them. Every win feels political. Every loss feels catastrophic. The team's identity has been hijacked by the noise surrounding its best player. The narrator then pivots, exploring how media institutions have quietly contributed to the chaos. He notes how major outlets use Clark's name as a guaranteed engagement magnet, even when the story isn't about her. Headlines like How Caitlin Clark's Rise Affects Angel Reese's Legacy, or Why WNBA. Players are divided over Caitlin Clark dominate feeds not because they inform, but because they provoke. It's click psychology. And while these narratives draw millions of views, they also deepen divisions, turning teammates and rivals into content. Every journalist wants the quote that breaks the internet, the narrator says. But no one asks who gets broken in the process. It's not just the mediats, the fans too. The narrator takes aim at the tribalism that's infected WNBA spaces. Entire communities have formed around supporting or attacking Clark. Some idolize her to the point of worship. Others despise her as a symbol of privilege or favoritism. But the truth, as always, lies somewhere in the middle. Clark didn't ask for any of this. She didn't manufacture the hype, the coverage, or the polarization. She just kept playing. Yet she's become the canvas onto which everyone projects their opinions about race, gender, marketing, and equality in sports. She's not the villain, the narrator says. She's the mirror, and people hate what they see in it. Behind the scenes, the Fever organization is in damage control mode. PR teams monitor social media trends. Strategists prepare statements for controversies that haven't even happened yet. And coaches try to shield players from the noise. It's a losing battle. The narrator shares an anecdote from an unnamed insider who described team meetings as therapy sessions. Not because of internal conflict, but because the players are constantly processing what's being said about them online. You can't compete at your best, the insider says, when the internet's dissecting your every breath. Meanwhile, the CBA clock keeps ticking. The narrator reminds viewers that the WNBA's upcoming collective bargaining agreement isn't just a business issue, it's a battle for survival. The league's success depends on balancing growth with stability, but the current chaos threatens both. Sponsors are cautious. Networks are nervous. If the narrative around the WNBA becomes toxic drama instead of historic progress, it could undo years of hard-won credibility. And that's why, ironically, the league needs Caitlin Clark more than ever. Her visibility is its lifeline, even as it becomes its greatest challenge. The story zooms out again, footage of sold-out arenas, young girls in fever jerseys, chants of CAI Teelan. Caitlin, echoing through stadiums. The narrator's tone turns hopeful. For all the noise, for all the chaos, he says, look at what she's done. Ticket sales. Record ratings. Merch sold out. The numbers don't lie. Caitlin Clark has reignited interest in women's basketball at a level no one thought possible. She's the spark that made millions care. The problem hurts the system that doesn't know how to handle her success. And as much as people claim to hate her, the numbers prove the opposite. Every game she plays breaks a new viewing record. Every clip of her shooting a logo, 3 racks up millions of views. Even her haters are part of her reach. They boost her visibility every time they post. That's the paradox, the narrator explains. The same outrage that tries to destroy her is what keeps her on top. It's poetic and cruel. The cycle feeds itself endlessly. Hate fuels clicks. Clicks fuel fame. Fame fuels more hate. The narrator pauses for a long moment before saying what feels like the heart of the entire story. The league doesn't need less. Caitlin Clark needs more. Honesty about what she represents. She's not perfect, but perfection was never the point. She's proof that women's basketball can command the same attention, controversy, and emotion as any major sport. The WNBA isn't in chaos because of Hurts, in chaos because it wasn't ready for her. Then, the focus shifts back to the Fever locker room. The camera follows Clark walking down the tunnel after a game, sweat on her brow, eyes forward, ignoring the cameras. The narrator reflects, she's learning to live in the noise, to play through it, not above it. It's a lesson every great athlete learns eventually. Fame is the cost. Learns eventually. Fame is the cost. The storm didn't fade, it evolved. By the time the next morning hit, Caitlin Clark's name wasn't just trending. It was a war zone of opinions, alliances, and conspiracies. The narrator opens with a chilling line. This isn't fandom anymore, it's faction warfare. Screens glow across the country, thousands of posts dropping every minute. Each one louder, angrier, more absolute than the last. The divide is no longer about basketball, it's about identity. The people who once cheered side by side are now soldiers in a digital battlefield, fighting over who owns the narrative of women's basketball. The camera cuts to montage, clips of sports talk shows, podcasts, reaction videos, even late-night comedians cracking jokes. Everyone has an angle, and every angle has a cost. The narrator's voice cuts through the chaos like static, explaining how every era of sports has its moment of cultural fracture, but few happen this fast. Jordan had years, he says. LeBron had months. Caitlin had weeks. The fame that should have built her legacy instead became a weapon against her sanity. Each time she spoke, her words were spliced, twisted, remixed into 1,000 interpretations. Every silence, too, became ammunition. Inside Fever headquarters, a different kind of tension brewed. Meetings stretched late into the night, public relations teams drafting statements that would never see daylight. The organization had become a crisis command center. Learning that every day in the Caitlin Clark era was damage control disguised as management. Coaches whispered about game strategy, but the real strategy was survival. One staffer described it as trying to play chess in the middle of a hurricane. The noise outside never stopped long enough to think 2 moves ahead. Meanwhile, the players started to fracture under invisible pressure. Some felt overshadowed, others exhausted by the constant circus. A veteran player reportedly said, "We're not a team anymore. We're a storyline." And she wasn't wrong. Every locker room interaction became potential content. When cameras entered, shoulders stiffened. Smiles felt forced. Reporters asked about chemistry, but what they really wanted were sound bites, proof that the rumors of friction had truth. The narrator explains it bluntly. In a media ecosystem built on conflict, peace doesn't sell. Then came the moment that broke the internet, a leaked clip from practice. Clark and another teammate exchanging sharp words after a missed play. It was nothing unusual. A burst of competitiveness, the kind that happens daily in any professional team. But within hours, that 2-second clip had become evidence of locker room chaos. Commentators replayed it like Zapruder footage, dissecting every gesture, every glare. The hashtag fever falling trended for 3 straight days. What fans didn't see were the hours afterward, the apology, the laughs, the handshakes. The truth, as the narrator says, never stands a chance once the algorithm smells blood. The league office tried to intervene quietly. Meetings were held about protecting the narrative. But you can't control a wildfire by whispering to the smoke. Even as executives strategized, new controversies ignited, old college quotes resurfaced. Rival fan bases reignited feuds, and pundits speculated on Clark's marketability fatigue. Yet beneath the chaos, something profound was happening. The WNBA had never been more visible. Every network, every platform, every casual fan now had an opinion. The narrator calls it the paradox of exposure growth and